Hello, everybody. Welcome to California Water Conservancy's podcast. I'm your host, Ayan Raza, and today we are joined by guest speaker Deb Kramer, who is the head of Keep Coyote Creek Beautiful, a local nonprofit here in San Jose. And before we begin, I just want to say thank you for joining me, Miss Kramer. It's an honor to have you here. Truthfully, I have loved your organization ever since I found out about it my freshman year. And I'm really honored to have you here as a guest speaker.
Thank you, Ian. And I'm really grateful that you've selected our organization to be on your podcast.
Wonderful. All righty, let's dive right into it. So, Ms. Kramer, please introduce yourself and tell the listeners a little bit about your work.
Sure. So I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area in the East Bay, and I went to school at Cal. So I'm a Cal grad and I studied environmental science. And I've had a lot of positions working in the environment realm, but for the last 9 years, I've been the executive director after I founded Keep Coyote Creek Beautiful. And the work that we do is around connecting people to nature through Coyote Creek. And I have a staff of 5 of us, and typically I write grants and develop and manage the programs.
All righty, that's awesome. So, what motivated you to take on Keep Coyote Creek Beautiful and get into this line of work?
Well, I'm really glad you asked because Coyote Creek is a 64-mile long creek. So there's a lot to do along it. But I started the organization in 2015, and it was from a grant from the city of San Jose. And I've continued to receive grants to help clean up the creek, but also educate people about what the special needs are, as well as the special aspects of the creek, and then also conduct education with people. So we have a lot of events around that. So our work is, as I mentioned, not just to do creek cleanups on Coyote Creek, but really engage people and get them outdoors, which is really important. And the best way to do that is to do education.
Yeah, definitely. So you mentioned all of these things. So I guess what are some of the main top goals that your organization strives towards? I know cleanups are important. I know getting people out there are important. Is there anything else in particular?
Well, our vision is for a Coyote Creek that is a resilient ecosystem for all living things to enjoy. So, in order to achieve that, along with the creek cleanups, we really want to engage people, such as through advocacy, going to council meetings or water district meetings, and letting people know they're the people who have the power, that they care about the creek and that they want change to happen for its benefit. And we also, as I mentioned, educate people. So we have not only a K-12 education program, but we work a lot with San Jose State students. And then there's public education as well. And then we encourage people, just by bringing communities together. So we get, as you've seen from coming to our creek cleanup,
Yeah.
we get people who are across the spectrum, from residents and retired folks and people who love nature, and a lot of high school students who need community service hours. So all of that is really to connect community together, to play along and enjoy a healthy Coyote Creek.
Oh, that's really cool. So I know your organization does a lot with cleanups, of course, Keep Coyote Creek clean, or well, beautiful, but um, so what's the typical cleanup process from planning, getting volunteers, and finally execution?
Well, it's pretty typical to most volunteer activities, where we first have to figure out what our time frame is, and as well as what type of event. So in the case of a cleanup, we know that we want to pick a place that we can do a creek cleanup. And there are a lot of opportunities, but most of our work happens within central San Jose. And so once we've selected a location, we then and a date, we then will coordinate with the city of San Jose on the exact location. So we may say that we want to work in a particular zone. And then with that, we can start recruiting our volunteer team leaders who we have to help keep everyone safe. And then as regards to recruiting volunteers, we get the word out through our elected officials. We also post on Volunteer Match and through universities, so we're able to recruit. And then we provide all the supplies for volunteers. So that's one of the things that we have to do as a task as well. And safety is the most important piece of the work that we do, but we also want people to have fun. So when we execute our events, we make sure that we include our team leaders include some fun facts about being out in the creek, try to show them some wildlife when we encounter it, and of course what poison oak looks like, and then snacks at the end. So a lot of opportunities within an event for people to connect.
Definitely. So, cleaning up is an important part of it, but also I think you mentioned, raising awareness and educating individuals about Coyote Creek and your organization. So, what are some of the most pressing environmental challenges that face Coyote Creek? And can I or another average citizen take any steps to combat or prevent them?
That's a really great question. And pretty much the answer is that the same issues that affect Coyote Creek affect the globe. We're really faced, especially in the United States, in California in particular, we have a large homeless population, and uh, that really makes an impact on the quality of the environment, from smoke from fires to degradation of the watershed in terms of pollution, or even the edges of the creek, the embankments. But coupled with that is climate change, which again is a global phenomenon. And we've had significant rain, but we've also had drought. So all of that impacts the watershed. Another thing that, again, is a global impact is development of our land. So just putting more concrete and more buildings without having a natural environment to help with absorbing the water or to provide cooling like trees definitely has a negative impact. And pollution is something, again, that happens all over the world, whether it's through trash or it's through degrading water quality with oil spills, things like that. So to answer your question around actions that people can take, first and foremost, I encourage people to go outdoors and enjoy nature. Without an appreciation for it, I think it's really hard for us to make a decision or a choice for nature's well-being. And then also, with regards to people who are unhoused, is to support housing and service options for people who are unhoused. A lot of people have been saying, oh, I don't want housing for people who have mental illness in my neighborhood, but the best way to help people get help is to have places for people to get resources. I also think if people do their part to not only conserve water, but to eat wisely, that can make a difference as well. Our meat consumption is definitely making a negative impact on our globe. And we do have a lot of fruits and vegetables that are grown locally, and supporting those farmers is really important. Another thing is to advocate for sensible land development. As I mentioned, building on our unspoiled spaces has definitely been having a negative impact on our wildlife and our environment. So supporting things like higher density housing, your transit hubs, is a really great way to advocate. And one of the easiest ways is to attend an agency meeting, or even just write a letter. Simple thing, put trash where it belongs.
Yeah.
It does not belong in the gutter. It does not belong along our creeks. It belongs in a trash can. And then I think the last one that I want to leave people with, it's an easy one, is if you have property, don't use pesticides or herbicides, because they can pollute our creeks. They can kill birds, for example. If the rodents eat the pesticides and then the birds eat it, it goes through the food chain. And that also has a really negative impact on our environment as a whole.
Yeah, definitely. And I really found the intersection between all of these different issues around the globe and California to kind of merge together and to affect everything, right? Homelessness, while we may see it as completely different from Coyote Creek, it actually does have a really big impact. So if we can help alleviate one, we could help the other as well.
That's true. And I also think that, just raising awareness through our communities is so important. So, for example, something that people can do is is go to a neighborhood association meeting and maybe just talk about what their concerns are with regards to how to keep the creek clean or how we can make individual choices. And I think practice what you tell people is the most important. So if you model good behavior, then other people will notice that and maybe make some changes themselves.
Yeah, definitely. I think individual action is very important. Thank you. Awesome. So you've been the head of your organization for a pretty long time. Can you describe how like the conditions of Coyote Creek have changed throughout the years and what factors have contributed to these changes? Of course, the globe is changing every second. But is there any like main factors that you feel have really impacted the creek?
So, first of all, this is the longest I've ever stayed at one job. Usually, every 5 years, I change jobs. So, the fact that I've been doing this for 10 years demonstrates my commitment to the community and to having a healthy watershed. And I have seen a lot of changes, mostly for the worst. And as I mentioned earlier, the number one thing I think has been homelessness, and that's just really impacted our creeks. And part of the reason for that is that there's limited policing and enforcement of existing laws, which has severely impacted the quality of nature in our communities. For example, even just living along a creek, there are laws that the Fish and Wildlife Service have that says you can't do that, but it's not enforced. But if we don't have places for people to live, then it's really challenging to say, hey, you can't live here, so you need to move on. Another thing that I've noticed is that the water quality and the embankments along the creek have significantly degraded. We used to see a lot more birds and even some turtles living along the urban area of the creek, and we rarely see turtles. We see a lot of crawfish, but and some birds like the mallard ducks that seem to not be immune, relatively immune to pollution. But otherwise, we've really seen a limit in the number of wildlife in the water. With the trees being burned too, that also has an impact on some of the bird species and others that would use those trees for habitat. And I think that trail use has been improving to some degree. Coyote Creek has had a couple more miles of trail added, and there's another 3 miles of trail that's under construction right now. So, with that, hopefully, people will want to get outdoors and enjoy using the trails, whether it's biking or walking with their friends. And we've encouraged people to participate in our creek and trail cleanups. And so that's been something that we've noticed has helped. And then I think another thing that I'm really excited about is that it's kind of a bonus is that Coyote Valley, which is a major wildlife corridor and provides many ecosystem services, has nearly 2,000 more acres preserved for agricultural and natural uses than it did when I started 10 years ago. And that's really due to 35 years of a couple of different organizations, the Open Space Authority, the Peninsula Open Space Trust, even the city of San Jose and Green Foothills, to push and push and push for the city and the county to preserve this land. And kind of getting back to ecosystem services, an example is in 2017, we had the Coyote Creek flood. And that was where the Anderson Reservoir overflowed at its spillway. So, with that, a lot of water came down through Coyote Valley. Now, if that whole area had been paved over,
Mhm.
the downstream effects would have been even more tragic. Uh, we ended up with several areas that were flooded where people live, but more importantly, a lot of parkland was allowed to flood, and that's because it had not been developed. So, if Coyote Valley had been developed, the downstream flooding would have been significantly worse. So this preservation of this land has been huge. And I think that's a real great success story along Coyote Creek.
Yeah, I think unfortunately, of course, things do get worse as climate change progresses and as our state gets more complex. But I like that you added a lot of hope there, with the preservation. So does I know you were mentioning the city of San Jose and other organizations that work to preserve this land. So does your organization collaborate with other local environmental groups or other government agencies?
Oh, yeah, there are just so many that we work with. And just a quick look, if anybody wanted to, at our website, keepcoyote creek beautiful.org. One of the things you'll see is we have over 30 partners. On the agency side, I mentioned the city of San Jose, but we work very closely with Santa Clara County Parks, also the Don Edwards National Wildlife Refuge, so out in the Bay. And then we also partner with school districts and universities. On the environmental group side, we have the San Francisco Bay Bird Observatory that we work out at the Bay doing plantings and weeding for wildlife. And the Santa Clara Valley Audubon Society really helps to bring people's awareness about birds and the food sources that they have and their habitat, whether it's insects or the plants that they consume. Um, the Sierra Club has also been a really good partner in helping to advocate for the work that we collaboratively do around preserving the environment. Some of our partners that also do creek cleanups are the South Bay Clean Creeks Coalition and the Trash Punks, and also the Guadalupe River Park Conservancy. And within them are the executive directors and program managers. We all talk amongst ourselves about things that are working really well, areas that we might collaborate on to improve the environments in which we work. And then we also work together with our neighborhood associations. And I think that, looking at the immediate community, for example, Hellier County Park has a lot of neighborhoods right around it. And so we want to bring people into Hellier County Park, but also see the creek and the value that they can contribute by either documenting it or enjoying nature on one of our nature walks.
I live pretty close to Hellier County Parks or that area, so I love walking through it. It's awesome. Um, so I know you mentioned advocacy was really important. So I guess, does your organization participate in advocacy efforts to further your cause? And like what specific efforts? You mentioned talking to like neighborhoods and the city. Is there anything else or anything in specific regarding those?
Yeah, so the power lies a lot in the voices of the public talking to agency members and elected officials. Because if they don't know what you want, then they're just going to go with what other people tell them. So if we as residents and citizens tell the elected officials, hey, we want to have clean creeks, and here's my idea on how to do it, it really provides them with guidance on how to put together laws or policy. And it's even better if it's collective voices. So, with regards to advocacy, our organization has worked, for example, with the Protect Coyote Valley group, and we were one of the lead groups on that to help support the restrictions on development by writing letters collectively to the county when they were putting together a policy around their urban zone, and also to the city of San Jose, where right now they're looking at maybe having more development along Monterey Road through Coyote Valley, but we're trying to let them know that, hey, there's a lot of wildlife
Yeah.
that needs the space to move through. So all of those are examples of advocating for a healthier environment. And as I mentioned, those were collective efforts that we do. But another is supporting housing and the services that go with that. So people may not think that it's part of an environmental advocacy sort of thing, but if one of the factors around a healthy environment is that there are a lot of people living along our creeks and in our parks, then yes, we need to advocate for housing.